سلام خدمت هموطنان عزیزم. Hello everyone. I'm Ali Khodadadi from Iran. I'm happy to have you with me in this webinar. Also, it's my pleasure to accompany Dr. Diba that was and is my prof, and accompany our colleague Martin Josst in this webinar. My subject is about architecture competition. My presentation is more than 70 slides, but due to lack of time, it's not possible to present all the slides and skip some more quickly. We want to show in this webinar why and how architectural competitions from the point of view of experience, an overview of the evolution of standards of Austria and Iran. My knowledge on the subject is the result of about 4-year work and experience, 2015 to 2019, as the Secretary of Secretariat of Architectural and Urban Competitions. On this career path, the experiences mentioned in the book Winning by Design, Architectural Competitions by Judith Strang. I said that mentioned in the book Winning by Design, Architectural Competition by Judith Strang, the Secretary of Royal Institute of British Architects, RIBA, 1969 to 1979, have been my companion. We must skip this. Yes. Skip some more. Let me see. We see in this picture the Azadi Tower, known as Shahya Tower. Its architect is Hossein Amanat, while its successful revolves in the format of architectural competition in Iran. Iran National Library. We know the competition make news, controversial over the historic nature of the competition. Some have emphasized the necessity of holding competition. Some others have denounced it. In this picture, we are seeing projects all around the world that was the result of competitions, architectural competitions. You see Shahyad Square and Shahyad Tower in the Shahyad Square, and Sydney Opera, and etc. I gather some controversial architectural competitions, such as New Opera House for Cardiff Bay, British Museum Reading Room, Thott's project for the Bankside Power Station, Iran's National Library, and Iran's pavilion in Expo 27 Milan. I choose the New Opera House for Cardiff-based competition, international design competition, and this competition was held and was eventually won by Zaha Hadid. However, the project failed to win financial support from the Millennium Commission, the body which distributed funds, the UK National Lottery. The process of participating in the competition and discussing the contextualization of the selected design. We can see all together the Opera House. Another example that I show you is Iran's National Library's competition. This project is the result of that. In this project, the fourth place of the competition was chosen for construct. Firas Architecture Consulting Company won the competition, and time of competition was 1995. This competition was held with Ministry of Road and Urban Development in Iran. Important problem of this competition. Failure to comply with the rules and etiquette of the competition. This was one of the most important marginalizing discussion. We skip from and there is a lack of time, and because of that I must skip live. In this subject, we want to show the legislation and supervision of the competition in Austria. We want to explain about that. We sort by time. See the column? At first, in the era of Austria royal government. At first. Next, plenty of conflicts between the architect and government member of the construction sector on the style of a specific government project. After that, we see the beginning of the legislation was by an administrative order for public buildings in Austria. In 1864, some German architects and engineers in Vienna raised a series of discussion on primary professional principles of competition standards. After that, the principles of public competition were established in 1864 in Hamburg and was accepted by Association of Austrian Engineers and Architects. In 1974, the new edition of the competition principles in Austria by Association of Austrian Engineers and Architects. We see the next level and next standards after that. CRA 1988, CRA 2000 and other. But what about legislation in Iran? Legislation and supervision of competitions in Iran. In this part, we wanna explain that. At first in Iran, quality demands rise. The social demand since 1997 and between 2002 and 2003, in 1997, the craft to regulation and principles of competition. Ministry of Roads and Urban Development. After that, we see the Guide to Architecture and Urban Planning Competition, Guide to Organization, Architecture and Urban Planning Competition, issue 214. State Management and Planning Organization. In 2003, the Comprehensive Regulation of Architecture and Urban Planning Competitions approved by Supreme Council of Culture of Revolution in 2003. Due to that, all the national competition, either the employer was the private or the public sector, is covered with this legislation. Two thousand to 2013 academic article and criticism rise by Tehran University and other university in Iran. In 2013, forming a work group in Tehran Construction Engineer Organization. In 2014, Young Architect forming a work group in the Ministry of Road and Urban Development. 2015, the instruction to establish the Secretariat of Architecture and Urban Development Competition. Approved by Supreme Council of Architecture and Urban Planning in Iran. Next step, establishing the supervising institution. 2015. Approved by Ministry of Road and Urban Development. Next step, gradual decrease in supervised competitions 2015, the instruction to establish the Secretariat of Architecture and Urban Development competition. Approved by Supreme Council of Architecture and Urban Planning in Iran. After that, May 2015, the official systematic supervision process started. But we lost the other slide about the cause of holding competition. We lost this slide. Because of that conclusion, including the legislation in Austria and Iran in the comparing part, we read that the experience of holding competition, ethical rules, and supervising the organized competition suggests that the evolution has been really similar in Iran, England, and Austria, while different in the time and place of the evolution. It means the harm have revealed, altered public demands, resulted in editing advice letter and guides on the course of evolution, and finally, the mandatory regulations were announced. What is considered obvious is that, despite various beliefs on the necessity of holding competitions, it is emphasized in most developed countries, even in Iran, that the most appropriate method to choose the design and designer is architecture and urban planning competition. In this regard, plenty of action have been developed to promote competitions in Iran and developed countries by their governments. For instance, in England, the national lottery is being held. Part of the resulted profit is allocated to competitions. In Iran, the instruction for identification of iconic building and construction has been approved by the Supreme Council of Architecture and Urban Development since 2017, for which holding competition on iconic building has been emphasized and mandated. Either the establishment, the competition secretariat in the body of Iranian government, or the required administrative order to organize the competition on public building design in Austria can be considered among the experience of government involvement in the area of architecture and urban planning competitions. However, it's obvious that for continuation of the supervisory task, governments need to play the facilitating role as the experience of establishing the secretariat in Iranian government body. I mean Ministry of Road and Urban Development in Iran. The government body suggested that administrative and approach changes in different governments has damaged the necessity of professional supervision, so the institution has become passive or has been rejected by the professional community due to the weak performance. We see after establishing the Secretariat Architecture and Urban Development in Iran, during the supervisory task, they became passive. Therefore, at the end, the solution must be offered by Iranian architects community, not political authorities of specialized departments who have been in a specialized professional and managerial position with no expertise, experiences, and qualification for 40 years. The Iranian Architects Association, and consequently, the Iranian architecture system can be considered as the measure to guide the experiences on a more stable path in the future. At the end of the presentation, I wanna show case study. This case study is Knowledge Gate, designed the Knowledge Gate in Isfahan, Iran. We try to do the legislation and laws very clearly. You see efforts made to minimize injuries in the Knowledge Gate competition. You see complete equipment and manpower specialized in holding competitions. I wanna point that failure to hold the competition by the consultants of the specialized forces in the matter in most competitions the most damage and injuries. Another efforts are made by the management team to respect all those involved and participants in the competition during that. Efforts are made by the management team to respect all those involved and participants in the competition during that. Trying to answer the ambiguity and questions of the participants, arranging and approving the competition program with the cooperation and approval of each member of the jury, comprehensive news and exclusive invitation from many famous architects of the country, and other tasks, other reports. The results of the technical review and compliance with the competition schedule were prepared and provided to each of the judges. Modify and increase the time allotted by each judge to review each of the design. I want to point that also in many competitions, this time has been very short. The limitation and features of each design were prepared along with the correction proposal by each of the judges. Publish all received work, 101 works. I said that, I apologize. The limitation and features of each design were prepared along with the correction proposal by each of the judges. Published all received work 101 works. The process of observing works to examine the quantity of work in today's vast world of information is very difficult and perhaps impossible, but part of the process will be undertaken by citizens and architects themselves in criticizing work on media and social networks. That was the important act in this competition, heeding the vote of each member of the judge in the process, clarifying the judging process by simultaneously broadcasting the ceremony and opening the envelope on the day of the ceremony. Also, I want to point that the complete closure of the arbitration process and the confidentiality of this hearing usually increase the space for destructive criticism. And at the end, completion of 2 volumes of books on the subject pressing work and critique of works in the executing process. Completion Competition, in addition to having many features, should be applied theme from competition, constructive criticism in the performance of competition, accountability of judge in their decision, and mutual training should play a great role in Iran's society. At the end, we must show the process of this competition and holding a competition, the knowledge gate. You see site visits in this slide. Jury meetings, results announcement ceremony, results announcement ceremony, you see also.
for having us on the lecture. My name is Martin Josst from DMAA based in Vienna, and I will tell the story a little bit from the architect's point of view. I will start with some we have 28 years of experience in competitions, and I will give you a short overview what we did and what kind of tendencies we see, especially in Europe. Let's summarize a little bit of our last year experiences. During the last 20 years, we did 514 projects. Most of the projects we did came out of or were based on competitions. You see it's a ratio of 82% is based on competitions we do in our projects. 77 projects from the 500 are built, so it's around 15% of projects that appear out of this competitions we are doing. So let's have a little look at the last year. We did total competitions of 21. And we are in the lucky position that most of our competitions are invited competitions, so we are just dealing with a limited number of competitors. Normally it's around 5 to 6. The race car is back. A little hard for me then to explain everything. Okay. The number of people of competitors is around 5 to 30, which obviously increases the chance of again. The good thing that we are invited into, let's say, limited competition where the competitors are limited. It's around 5 to 30 competitors, and obviously this increases the chance of winning. If you do a competition, sometimes it's one phase, sometimes two phase. So you see nearly half of it was one phase where you are working on it and present it, or you're working on it and submit it. The other half is 2 or 3 phase where you first start with a, let's say, a design idea or urban design idea. You have a presentation, and then most of the time they cut down the numbers of participants, and then you can continue. Also the number of competitors, if it's anonym or not anonym, it's nearly 50-50. Sometimes it's good if it's anonym, but sometimes of course it's nice if you can present your design, design idea to the client and get a real feedback and go for a second phase. Because you have to work together with the client for the next years, and then also for the client it might be nice to know the architect he's working with, and not only to see the result of the competition but also to see the people behind the design. As you can see, we did most of the competitions in Europe, in Austria, Germany and Switzerland, but also Asia is an interesting market for us. You see, if you do 21 competitions a year, it's a pretty much amount of working hours. So we are about 15,000 hours that we spend into competitions, and the ratio we won is 5 of 21, so satisfying by nearly 1/4 of the competitions we did. So this is a little bit of the to see the data and the results we are working on. Let's look a little bit, since we're doing most of the competitions in Europe. Yes, I want to share our experience of competitions in Europe with you. Let's start with Germany. In Germany we had the experience, also what we heard before in the lecture. It's very important if it's public or private competition, if the client is the government or if the client is a private investor. And this has, in most of the time, a strong impact of the time that is following. For example, if you look at one sample, which is the Porsche Museum in Stuttgart, we won the competition mid of the year 2006, and 2.5 years the project was completely finished. So you can see that the kind of private investor, the private client, really has an interest to do this project very fast. And on the other hand, if you look at this competition, for example, we won in 2013. We did this for the government of the city of Munich in Germany, but it's still a planning process. It's still not decided, is it housing or is it an office tower? So the decision makers in the government are sometimes dramatically slower than a private investor, and of course that affects the time you have to calculate for the project, and also it affects the design at the end. Another good example for this private or public client is the theater we're doing in the city of Karlsruhe, also in Germany. We won the competition in 2015. What you see here on the image is the existing building. It was built in the 70s. It came also out of a competition. You see here the architects from the 70s, where they're looking at their model. And if you compare, let's say the model of the 70s, the winning entry, and I go back here to the result, you see that the design dramatically changed after winning the competition due to time and cost and other reasons. But anyway, we were looking at the design of the 70s and at the strength also of the design of the 70s, and we try to transfer this or transport this in our nowadays. We won the competition in 2015. We were kind of following the design idea of the original architect from Betzner from the 70s of his competition entry, with this kind of tents on the roof that were lost in realization. And you can see here, for example, his entry in the 70s and our proposal now, because the theater needs an additional theater, so it's a kind of taking the existing building and refurbish it, but also add an additional building, but it still has to keep the identity of the old building. And as you can see also here, if you compare it to the Porsche Museum, where you had a private client, we won the competition in 2015. Now we have 21. It's still nothing built. We are still in the planning process. The decision maker is the city of Karlsruhe and the government of the country. And if it's a public client, it takes a very long time to keep on this controlling process. Where do we spend the money, and how can we do it, and how can we argue to public, and how can we realize it in single modules to cost control. But at the end, sometimes I have the feeling that it takes longer, not only longer, but also you have to spend more money at the end, because as you can imagine, if your planning process is 6 years and is nothing built so far, it's a lot of time and money passing by. But this is just a short experience about private and public clients. You have to be aware when you make a competition. Another interesting sample is in the Netherlands, where we were asked to give a design idea for the film museum in Amsterdam. It was interesting because the client was also a private client, and they didn't want to do a competition. They asked 3 architects to come over to Amsterdam and tell their idea of movie, of film and light, how it can influence architecture and how you can bring the people into a space where you show movies and exhibition of movies. And you did not make a big like 10 panels with sections and drawings and renderings. It was more like a really like a discussion you did with the client, and it was more on a human base. We were looking at each other's eyes, and it was kind of more like a personal feeling. Can we work together for the next 3 or 5 years? And is it possible that we speak the same language? And that was very interesting, because one of the tendency in Europe is that you have to submit so much stuff on the panels, and it's nearly a schematic design you provide for competition. Here it was really like, okay, can we work together? Let's sit together, have a talk. Of course, every of the invited architects had the experience to do it, but so it was more like a personal decision of client with which architect we can work together. And all of you might know the result that appeared out of this kind of dialogue with the client, and it's one of the new symbols in Amsterdam, right next to the main station. Okay, but there are other countries we also try to do competitions in Europe. That is France. In France, it's very complicated if you're not a France-based office to enter the competitions. Even if we are one Europe for Austrians, and it's nearly impossible if you don't have a France partner office, because the application form to enter the France competition system is quite complex, and so we never made it to enter and give a competition proposal in France. That is interesting. Same in Switzerland. It's very closed. It seems like they don't want to have any foreign architects in their. I mean, they have great architects, but sometimes it's nice to open the field. But it's not possible for us to enter or get an invitation for Switzerland. So it's somehow it's quite locked for us. Another tendency, which is quite interesting in the European or also in Austrian competition system, that you win a competition and you're very happy that you won, but you are not the only one who won. At least there are 2 or 3 first prizes. And this is, of course, if you spend so much effort and time into a project and they announce you as the first prize winner, but then you realize there are 2 or 3 others that are also on first prize, it's a little disappointing, because you have to rework and give a more detailed information to client or government to convince that yours is the best proposal. A good example for this, it's one client of us, it's Adidas. They ask us for several competitions, and in every competition we follow also Adidas idea, all in or nothing. So we're trying to always find a radical, outstanding answer to the client's briefing. And the ex-aequo first prize for Adidas, for us it's not so satisfying, because, for example, here, this is Adidas headquarters. It's in Bavaria. It's on the landscape. They have a lot of facilities here, and they started building up this in the early 2000 years. And the first competition we won is here, the Customer Experience Center. That was won with another Austrian office, so there were 2 first prizes, and unfortunately we were not chosen to continue the project. Then we were invited to this office building here, where they kicked us out in the first round, which is okay when they don't like our proposal. But in the third try here, which was again an office building, we came up, let's say, with this very unusual deepness of offices for European standards. The building has a deepness of more than 40 meters, and kinds of react to this issue that you have a lot of non-permanent working spaces. So the ratio between permanent and non-permanent working spaces before Corona in this office space was kind of a split of 40 non-permanent and 60 permanent places. I think after Corona it will be even different. But here you can see that you have the permanent working places around the window, and in the middle you have like this working possibilities, which end up in this kind of canyon of sports, which was developed for Adidas. And obviously they liked the idea. They put us again on first place, but together with another office. And again, we did not win. And you can imagine that I changed my footwear after third time. This was one experience. Another experience during our long time working on competition is that what I mentioned before, that the work scope, what you have to deliver to client, to government at the end, is increasing year by year. It's not only the design idea you have to show, but you have to fulfill at least a structural concept. You have to fulfill energy design, and your let's say team you entering a competition is getting higher and higher, and it's more like submitting, as I said before, a schematic design than a competition idea where you can where the audience understands the potential of the project. No, they want to really go into the costs. They want to go into very little corners of each detail. So you have to have a large group of consultants. You entering a competition, but at the end, not all of the consultants or none of the consultants is chosen if you win the competition to get the job as a team. The architect, if you win the competition, is chosen. They get the job, but then they have their own, let's say, partners for structure, their own partners for energy design you have to work with. So you always have to kind of find partners. You're developing an idea for competition, but you cannot promise that they get the job. That's a little bit of a conflict at the end. Yeah, but this is our office. This is how we work in our office, and every of the competitions we submit, as I said before, starts with a sketch, starts with one key idea for a project that is sometimes proven in a lot of physical models, and of course every project we do in the meantime is on a 3D model based, especially in competitions. And this is the kind of dialogue between 3D model and 2D model. You see here on the bottom you have your 3D file, on top you have your physical model, and they kind of making a dialogue to come to a good spatial solution. And meanwhile, the kind of visualization tool to see how the space is working, what kind of materials do we apply, gets very strong in terms of real-time renders. We started with our own software, but meanwhile we have using other software like, for example, Enscape or Twinmotion, where we in real time check out the 3D geometry for ourselves, for the design process, but also for clients. So if, for example, if we have the possibility to present the project in person, if it's not anonymous, and we have the chance to show the client our idea in person, we often give him a 3D tour through the design that he can imagine how the space looks and feels, because most of the clients, they cannot read 2D drawings, and so this is very helpful and strong tool. So it starts mainly with kind of a geometry overview, and then you start with first material mapping, and you end with a more client-orientated rendering, which you provide on the drawings at the end. Yeah, this was a little overview on how we internally manage the competitions. We also have a little bit of experience of the other side. We are of course also part of the jury, and we are kind of, the jury in Europe consists out of architects as experts. It consists out of the government, part of the city where the project is developed, and of course it consists all of the investor. So this triangle, architect, city, and investor, is normally in Europe it's the jury, and if we take part in the jury, we are of course fulfilling the part of the architect's profession. But to summarize, very often you can submit as much drawing as possible, but at the end it's the power of an image that convinces. So if you look at an image, you see and it communicates a lot, and you can see the power of the design. And in our experience also, if we are part in the jury, very often the quality of the image you provide decides the competition. It's amazing. You have to submit all this kind of drawings, all floor plans, all cost calculation, all structural systems, all energy designs. But at the end, the client is standing in front of the image and saying, this is what I want. Yeah, so this is one experience, that the image and the power of the image is one goal to win a competition. I switch a little bit from Europe to Asia. We have quite a lot of experience now in South Korea and China. In South Korea, we also realized some buildings, like for Hyundai Motor Group, we won a competition to make the complete CI for the company, which resulted in this huge flagship store in South Korea and Seoul. And for us also there, it was amazing how fast the decisions are made, how precise the construction site is going on, and everything seems to be very professional until the end. And if you build a project and you win a competition, it leads to further jobs. Here we were asked also in South Korea to an invited competition. There was a spa. We won this competition, and also here you see the power of the images that kind of convinced the client to go into realization. Change of perspective, as I said before, 80 or between 80 and 90% of our projects are coming out of competitions. During the last year, we luckily had a little bit of a shift from competitions to direct order. If you build something and they see the quality, the client luckily comes to you directly and asks, he wants something similar, or he wants this kind of design intention. So we are kind of in this transformation from competition to direct order, which is obviously very helpful because you have the client from the first day on your desk, and you can develop a project together with them. And this is what we do in China at the moment, and there are some very interesting projects resulting out of it. For example, here the Botanical Garden in Taiyuan, quite a big city in China, consisting out of the three green domes, entrance buildings, restaurants, tea house, all these kind of facilities. But also here we always trying to invent some new spatial experience or new materials. For example, this huge dome that is covering this kind of botanical garden here is made and built out of wood. Material you assume that it's very common in China for construction, but it is not. They kind of lost this experience of building with wood, and so we kind of developed this structural system with a Canadian structural planner and brought this structural system to China, and it was a great success. It just opened 1 year ago, and out of this project other projects appear, like for example this huge botanical garden which is under construction now in Shanghai. We just recently saw some facade samples, and this is going to be also a very interesting building. It's a combination of an old structure with some new facilities, but I don't want to go too much into detail with it. But China is a very interesting field for us for large-scale buildings, of course. This is a mixed use for around 300,000 square meters, office, housing, and retail. And they are really strongly following this idea of green and CO2 reduction. And you see this kind of green valley we kind of invented for this study we did in Shanghai. Yeah, at the end of our competition experience, I want to end with this interesting direct job. We were asked to do an opera house in Bahrain, and we had some Skype and video conferences, but we never saw the client on the other side. And we wrote a lot of emails, and we agreed on the fee for schematic design and design development. The only thing, it went over 2 months nearly, or 3 months, where we were in strong contact, and we negotiated the contract and everything for this opera. And we were very, very happy, of course, that we got this direct job and no competition. And then they said, the only thing you have to do, you have to pay, I think it was 3,500 euros to enter the Architecture League in Bahrain. And this is a small step you have to do, but then everything is clear and you can go for the project. And normally if you kind of have such a long negotiation and you see this big carrot of the opera house in front of your eyes, it is 3,500 euros is not too much. But then Dietmar, also a partner of the office, he got a little bit nervous and he didn't know something is wrong. And so we found out that this is a trick, that they are kind of cheating architects, and they want to have the 3,500 euros, which is compared to the big job of an opera house, not much. But at the end, if you submit the 3,500 euros, you will never hear anything from these dubious clients. So you also have to have a kind of experience what is real and what is not real, and who is cheating you, and what kind of client you have on the other side. And this leads a little bit back to this nice project we did in Amsterdam, where you were sitting on the desk with a client. You did no competition. You were just talking about architecture and film, and a nice project appeared out of it. So I'm at the end with my presentation of our short experiences on competition tendencies, and thank you very much for listening.